The next category is foundation. Those are bricks. These are just my little symbols for you visual learners, us visual learners. So foundation has to do with your relationship to gravity. And what I mean by foundation is how your weight is distributed over your base of support. How your weight is distributed over your base of support. So like if we look at Judy. So while Judy's writing, sorry, I'll wait till you're done. So Judy's sitting with her, in the V shape. But she could lean, so she's got most of her weight on her right leg. She hasn't changed her configuration or her position, but she has changed how her weight's distributed over it. You can come back, right? So when I'm talking about foundation, the first thing I'm talking about is what's the position. And the second thing I'm talking about is how is her weight distributed over that position, right? So you can see, like for instance, scanning has to do with foundation. Right? Because at the beginning we're asking people to notice. What do we ask people to notice in scanning? How they're? Mm-mm. No, we don't. I don't think we do we? How they're pressing or how they're making contact. See, weight is actually derivative. It's by noticing where your contact is that you can tell where your weight is. This is actually a point that Dennis makes when he's teaching, and I hadn't thought about it until I was with him when he was teaching this in a training. He said, most of the time we don't say, where's your weight? We say, where's your contact? What does that tell you about your weight? Because the thing is, we're asking people questions and giving them clues so that they can find the answer. Your contact is a clue that helps you find the answer to the question about where your weight is. So we're going back a half step to help people figure that out. You can try it in your class. Just ask them where their weight is and how they feel their weight on their shoulders and all these places. And then at a different time, just ask them about their skin and ask them what the difference is. Or do it in 2 different classes and see the difference. Or just record yourself doing it both ways and feel it. The questions aren't quite the same. So anyways, contact tells us about weight, distribution of contact. The lessons have to do with our relationship to space. And, that's the path stuff. And our relationship to gravity. That's foundation. Weight also has a direction. Because when you move your weight, it moves in a direction. So foundation, when your foundation changes, it has a path. That's because all these things are complicated, related to each other, so let's just keep it simple. So can you think about lessons where a foundation is important? Well, let me say a little more while you think about that. I would categorize, this is for you, Mary, there are 3 kinds of lessons. Like I was talking about lessons that have to do with initiation. There are different kinds of lessons that have to do with foundation. One way you could do that is you could say lying, sitting, standing, sitting in a chair, sitting on the floor, sitting cross-legged, sitting side-sitting. That would be one way to do it, but that's not what I mean. I once asked my Feldenkrais mom years ago, Edna Rosinas, still around, she lives in Marin County. She was in the San Francisco training. I said, Edna, what do you do in an FI when you don't know what to do? What do you do when somebody comes in, let's say, and they're in so much pain, they can hardly move? What would you do with them? And, without a moment's hesitation, she said, well, probably one of the first things I think about is helping them be more comfortable in the position that they're in. Helping them rest more fully. Now, if you've ever had an episode or longer than that in your life of pain, you know that resting is a very important function. Because Because if you can't rest, you are buggered. You're in trouble, right? So the first kind of lessons are resting lessons, and they help you be more comfortable in that position. I'd say the second kind of lessons are orbiting lessons. What I mean by orbiting, I mean moving around in a position. So like, we live in a country where, this is the only country I've ever been to in the world, where you could say something, this is, not for you, but, say I was a teacher and I had some tykes in there, and I could say, look you, park it there and be quiet. Now, that is an ass parking lot right there. That's kind of funny to think about it that way. You park it there at the beginning of the day and you drive away at the end of the day. But most people think about sitting as a static activity. But come on, you're sitting at work. So sometimes you're sitting forward and you're typing, or a little more forward and you're reading, or you're leaning back and you're reading. You're talking on the phone, or you're looking in the filing cabinet, or you're talking to somebody. Your foundation doesn't change, right? Because you're sitting the whole time. But you orbit around it. Your weight changes over it, and you change your configuration within that foundation. So those are orbiting lessons. And then the third kind of lessons are launching lessons, where you go from one position to another, and yes, launching and landing, because they do tend to come in pairs. What goes up must come down. So this would be a way of categorizing lessons. Are they resting lessons? Are they orbiting lessons? Are they launching and landing lessons? This is very useful in FI as well. But can you think of some lessons in any of those categories where the element of your relationship to gravity is the central organizing idea in the lesson, or one of the central organizing ideas in the lesson? Now, this will tell you something about me. This is the easiest category besides sequence for me to think of. Examples, I used to be a contact dancer, so where my weight is and how it moves is pretty central to how I see people moving. That's what I see. I look at Ingrid, I see where her weight is, where her imprint of her weight is. It's the first thing I see besides her skeleton. Actually, maybe even before her skeleton. Okay, now, that's going to be true for all of us. Everybody sees something first. I always like to say, the problem is not what you see first. The problem is that the first thing you see is the last thing you see. Yeah, but so what about foundation? Can you think of lessons that have to do with foundation? Mary, the last answer you had, you want to try it again?
Debbie, the headstand?
The headstand. Now the headstand, I have a long and torturous relationship with this series of lessons. When I was a little kid, I fell down a marble staircase, ass over tea kettle, and I really hated being upside down. So that was a pretty difficult lesson, and I really hurt myself. If it wasn't for Tom Myers, I think I probably still wouldn't be able to turn my head 33 years later or whatever. But I taught that lesson. That was one of the lessons I devoted myself to, because I decided I wanted to be able to teach that so nobody hurt themselves. That was like halfway through figuring out how to teach it. Actually, this is the second time I taught it, I think. And I went, oh my God, it has something to do with foundation. Duh. Right? Because you have this little triangular base of support. So the thing of the headstand is keeping the projection of your weight somewhere inside that triangle. Let's see. Do we have some apples? Whole ones? Somebody have an apple or an orange? Oh, I think I have. Do I have them?
I got my first.
Okay, thanks. Can I borrow yours? Okay. So, this is about path and orientation first. Well, let's do it this way. How many people believe that the earth is flat? You do?
Tom Friedman does.
Yeah, well, yeah, he does. In a funny way, though. Yes, but what do we mean by that? Is the earth flat? No. But let's say you were going into the basement here to get some equipment. You would be going downstairs. So down kind of makes sense on a flat surface or an up, right? Because there's up and down in relationship to this. If the earth is a globe, where's down? Well, yeah, so this is what Bucky Fuller said. We should be going in stairs. And flames don't fly up, they fly out. It's kind of like the appendix, the up and down is the leftover. But we don't fall down. This whole idea of up and down isn't what falling is about. If you go back to this idea that foundation is about your where your weight is in relationship to your base of support. If your weight isn't over your base of support, if your base of support isn't under your weight, then you fall. Right? And that's what you learn in the headstand is your weight better be within that triangle. That's about foundation. So that's a really good example. You were just a little early. You've probably been ahead of your time most of your life, haven't you? I feel for you. It's hard. Okay, how about another example of a lesson that's about foundation? Well, do you remember when you did bridging? Yeah, when you did bridging, there was a lesson that was the counterpoint to bridging. That was a lesson. There were kind of two lessons or two strands woven together. You remember what the counterpoint was? Obviously, you haven't taught this lesson, right? Hopefully. We haven't gone back and studied these. Well, the counterpoint... No, the counterpart to it is worming.
Yeah.
You know, pressing back in all these places and then going up and down in different ways and across. And yeah, so that's all about pressing and getting this line to happen, right? That's about foundation, how you press back. Right? But there is also a part to bridging that's about foundation, because if you don't have a standing foot and you don't have an elbow that's over your hand, if you're not standing, you can't bridge. That has to do with foundation too. Right? So same thing is true in the spine like a chain lessons, right? You have to have standing legs, you have to have support. And also there, rolling up, all that's about how your contact is changing. Right? That's not the only thing the lesson's about in that situation, but it's an important element.
So is the carping part of that too now?
Carping is a part of the headstand. Carping? Carping?
Yeah.
Just because I like to do this. This is carping. You know? It's part of the headstand. So the preliminary for the way Moshe taught it. So people take these things and do different things with it. But the way Moshe taught it is that the preliminary to the handstand is the judo roll, and then you start to do carping, because then you can fall out of the judo. You can fall out of the headstand either by rolling out of it or by carping out of it. So you learn to fall in either ways. And also the carping gets you to extend, which is the counterbalance, the flexion, and the rolling, the judo roll. And when you're upside down, you have to be able to extend to bring your legs up and be able to stay up. So carping contributes to the headstand. Yes? Kind of fun to talk about lessons like this, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
I guess Errol Flynn, there's a portion there where you come up and you have to have a foundation in order to do those movements, but it's not
I would say there it's an element rather than like a major thing. And, my lessons, most of my lessons have foundation as a really important part of it, in relationship to the gravity. A lot of lessons, that's just, it's in there. When we get done with all of these, I'd suggest, if you have some markers, take your favorite lesson. It doesn't matter who taught it. If you have a transcript from it, take your favorite lesson you have a transcript from. Give a color to each of these categories. Start highlighting it. If you do this with Moshe and his AY lessons, you'll see that most lessons will have every color. A little bit more, a little bit less. Some lessons will only have a few colors. And that really changes the flavor of the lesson. Like you could take a lesson, if you imagine, you really emphasize the foundation and the effort, the muscular part of it, right? You're going to create one kind of feeling. Whereas if you really emphasize the path and where you're going in space, you're going to create a whole different... The only thing I can call this is flavor.